Hello, I'm 8152, and these are the adventures of the Queen of Hearts in the city of Flan. The Queen of Hearts was deposed as Queen of Wonderland following the events of the Wonderland Anarchy, and was wandering distant lands questing, in order to secure wealth and influence with which she might make herself queen again. Blanc Lapin, also known as the White Rabbit, was originally a messenger and porter for the Duchess of Spades under the Heart Monarchy. He knew his way around other worlds, and was often used as a messenger to conduct business throughout the multiverse. His first encounter with Alice was purely accidental. He was only passing through Terra Nexus, on his way home from an entirely different world, using Terra Nexus as a shortcut, because of its abundance of dimensional gates, especially in the British Isles. However, he would intentionally travel to Terra Nexus to find Alice on 2 other occasions, first on request of the White Queen, so that Alice could play her part in the Third Chess War, and later under his own initiative in the hopes that she would put an end to the Wonderland Anarchy, which, ultimately, she did. During the White Queen's reign of madness following the Third Chess War, Lapin became a refugee, struggling with other displaced inhabitants of Wonderland to survive the now incessant wars. Always stronger than he looked due to his role as porter between worlds, and well used to running at a dead sprint at all times, to meet his former mistress's impossible timetables, Lapin was toughened and hardened by the war to become an effective scout. While he still preferred flight to confrontation, by the time of the Queen of Hearts' exile Lapin was a frightening foe when cornered. The Chapelier Dement, anachronistically listed here as chaotic neutral in a mistake that was corrected after filming, was a long-time enemy of the Queen of Hearts. His timid dissidence was inflamed by the Queen of Hearts' reign of terror following the Second Chess War, and he became a rabble-rouser, and ultimately open supporter and champion of the defeated White Queen. During the White Queen's reign of madness after the Third Chess War, she had Dement imprisoned for the crime of treason which, the Queen said, she knew he would commit in the future, because she lived her life in reverse. When Livre Damas, otherwise known as the March Hare, released him from the White Queen's dungeon near the start of the Wonderland Anarchy, Dement started a rebel militia with Mars and Lua, the Dormouse. He did not work directly with the Queen of Hearts' loyalist forces, but did cooperate with them without direct communication, while opposing the forces of the White Queen in Wonderland. Dement's soul poisoned by betrayal, terrified of the tyranny of queens, he became obsessed with finding a way to build an army that would make him king, and which could not betray him, which led to clockwork experimentation, the results of which were almost entirely destroyed by the end of the Anarchy. Dement was a mad genius and both strong and tough, his weapon of choice having been at one point a claymore. His greatest weakness was his madness. He frequently spoke in gibberish that may or may not have been some cipher that only he knew, and refused to acknowledge any of the events since the White Queen's triumph over the Queen of Hearts in the Third Chess War, despite his current alliance with the Queen of Hearts being totally nonsensical without the intervening events of the Wonderland Anarchy. Livre Damas, also known as the March Hare, was a diminutive and frail creature, not at all the sort that the Queen of Hearts would have wanted to accompany her in her exile. However, Dement would not join without bringing along Mars. Mars' best friend Chapelier Dement was driven completely insane by the events of the White Queen's reign of madness, when he was imprisoned for crimes he would commit in the future. When Mars broke him out of the White Queen's dungeon at the start of the Wonderland Anarchy, Dement, Mars, and their mutual friend Lua, the Dormouse, together started a rebel militia against the White Queen and her reign of madness. Dement ultimately used the militia as part of his mad clockwork experiments, and in the aftermath Lua would have nothing to do with Dement because of the tortures he'd inflicted on herself and Mars during the experiments. However, Mars remained loyal despite what Dement had done to him. Mars was even more brilliant, and even more mad than Dement, but also weak and frail even before his body was twisted by Dement's experimentation. Mars was mad even by the standards of Wonderland. often carrying on conversations with people who aren't there. Chevalier Care, also known as the Red Knight, had been a loyal servant of the Queen of Hearts since her birth. When the Red Queen was coronated upon her 17th birthday, the Queen of Hearts made a coronation gift of Care to her lifelong friend. Care served the Red Queen loyally for several years until the First Chess War. During the war, Care briefly captured Alice Liddell, a pawn of the White Queen. Soon after he'd captured her, Care's nemesis, Militus, a servant of the White Queen, arrived to rescue Alice. Care briefly fought with Militus before ceding Alice to him. Care's main mission was unrelated to Alice, whom he had captured opportunistically, and he considered giving up Alice to Militus to be a worthwhile trade at the time. Alice would go on to be crowned a new White Queen alongside the first, and her coronation was used as a cover to assassinate the Red Queen, leading to the Queen of Hearts' War of Vengeance, and, ultimately, the Wonderland Anarchy. Care returned to the service of the Queen of Hearts after the Red Queen's death. He blamed himself for letting Alice go, thinking he could have prevented everything that happened, if only he'd beaten Militus and held Alice captive. He held no ill will towards Alice, who was, in Care's opinion, only ever a pawn in the White Queen's plans. Care was frighteningly powerful and indomitably tough, but also gentle and quiet. His mannerism was as gentle and dedicated as his martial prowess is savage and relentless. Alice Liddell is widely believed in Wonderland to be an arbiter of fate for good or ill. While her first visit to Wonderland was largely uneventful, during her second visit she was used as a pawn by the White Queen to resolve the First Chess War in her favor, initiating the series of events that would culminate in the Wonderland Anarchy. Alice was, technically, made Queen of the White Monarchy alongside the White Queen as part of the complex legal maneuverings that ended the war. After losing her territorial gains from the First Chess War to the Queen of Hearts in the Second Chess War, the White Queen fabricated prophecies concerning Alice as a champion against the Queen of Hearts, and sent Lupin to retrieve her. The underclasses galvanized against the Queen of Hearts' reign of terror by Alice's appearance. The Third Chess War ended in victory for the White Queen. Alice was again sent home, missing entirely the subsequent train of madness. When Lupin retrieved her from Terra Nexus a third time in hopes that she would put a stop to the Wonderland Anarchy, Alice initially fought with the Queen of Hearts. However, in the aftermath of the Queen of Hearts' defeat, Alice learned that things were not as they seemed. Alice would fight with various other warlords in the closing years of the Anarchy, and by the end the White Queen was left once again as absolute monarch thanks to Alice's interference. Having spoken with Dement and the Queen of Hearts on the fruits of the White Queen's reign, Alice came to regret her choice of allegiance, and went into exile alongside her. While Alice still believed the Queen of Hearts to be excessively and unnecessarily cruel, she had become jaded enough towards Wonderland to wonder if perhaps she was in the least of many evils. By the time the Queen of Hearts arrived in Flan, Alice was a far cry from the small girl she was when she first arrived in Wonderland. Her limbs were imbued with supernatural puissance from her time as a wielder of the Vorpal sword, and she was a keen disciple of the blood magic of the Heart Monarchy. Her Majesty the Queen of Hearts, called also Regina Anima, was the rightful ruler of Wonderland and close friends with the neighboring Red Monarchy in nearby Looking Glass Land. Always short-tempered, Regina's spite was kept in check by her husband, Rex Nima. However, when the White Queen treacherously slew the Red Queen, even Rex agreed that this insult, and the growing threat of the White Monarchy, called for war. Rex went missing in the closing stages of the Second Chess War, some say assassinated by the White Queen. However, his disappearance did not save the White Monarchy from a decisive defeat and absorption of former Red Monarchy lands into the Heart Monarchy. Without the influence of Rex, the Queen of Hearts became a catastrophically wicked tyrant. Her appetite for blood slowly destroying her queendom, she was forced to learn to rein in her bloodlust, but only enough to preserve her from destruction. Even so, this left her with an unruly population which the White Queen was able to turn against the Queen of Hearts, by fabricating prophecies concerning Alice Liddell, and then fetching Alice from Terra Nexus to fulfill them. Regina and Alice would ultimately have a reconciliation of sorts in which Alice was forced to concede, after seeing the results of the White Queen's reign of madness and the subsequent Wonderland anarchy, that the Queen of Hearts was the least of many evils. Regina maintained throughout her alliance with Alice that her brutality was necessary to bring any semblance of order to a world as lunatic as Wonderland, while Alice maintained that, while Regina might be the least of all evils, she was still far more cruel than she needed to be. The Queen of Hearts had overcome enough of her impulsive nature to embrace her brilliance, and she had always been a talented practitioner of the blood magic which was her family heritage. She had also developed a powerful charisma during the Wonderland anarchy, refining her raw force of will into a commanding aura. The Queen of Hearts had a solid supply of potions that could shrink her courtiers, but unfortunately did not have much supply at all of the cakes that could make them grow. As it happens, being short is not very helpful at all. The gnomes and halflings were the shortest and most useless of the lot. Both of them could only learn the warrior's art to level 6, and were much smaller and weaker than other races, especially the halflings. They had absolutely no magical aptitude whatsoever, and could not become clerics or mages. While they made for excellent thieves, thieves are only occasionally useful on a quest, and lugging around someone who is nearly or completely useless 90% of the time is a greater act of charity than the Queen of Hearts would ever indulge in. Dwarfs, like Blanclarpin, were more promising. Although they were also unable to channel magical capabilities, they could reach the maximum warrior and thief levels available in the city, and were tougher, though slightly weaker, than humans. This made them ideal for warrior-stroke thieves. Elves were weaker than half-elves in all areas except one. Elves could reach level 11 in magic uses, but half-elves could only reach level 8. But Flan only taught mages up to level 6, making the advantage moot. Half-elves were in every other way superior, stronger and capable of reaching level 8 in the warrior arts, while elves could reach only level 7. The Queen of Hearts was not pleased to be forced into the company of elfin mage Livre Mars, but was forced to accept him to get the services of powerful half-elven warrior-stroke mage Chapalier Dement. Half-elves could reach level 5 in cleric, one level short of Flan's maximum of 6. Because clerics were already reasonably formidable combatants, and the Queen's party had a solid front line as it was, she decided that she and Alice Liddell would remain unchanged. Chevalier K remained his massive self, so as to preserve his strength. The Queen of Hearts party upon her arrival at Flan was one dwarven warrior-stroke thief, one elfin mage, one half-elven warrior-stroke mage, one human warrior, and 2 human clerics, a patchwork alliance between some of her most loyal retainers and some of her most committed enemies, and a surprising density of rabbits, which is a force to be feared, if boars, Ector, and Gawain are anything to go by.